It started with the sound of construction. A low hum of machinery that turned into a full-blown opera of jackhammers and shouting contractors. I thought nothing of it at first. After all, Tom, my neighbor, had always been a project guy. He once spent 3 weekends building a koi pond, only for raccoons to wipe out the fish in a single night. But this time was different. This time the project was massive. I saw the concrete mixers, the lumber, the blueprints flapping in the wind like pirate flags. He was building a pool. A big one. I didn't mind at first. I'm not against pools. But a week later, when I walked out with my morning coffee and nearly tripped into a trench on my side of the fence, I knew something was wrong. I called out, "Hey Tom, you know your crew's digging up my yard, right?" Tom popped his head over the half-demolished fence, all smiles. "Oh hey, yeah, it's just a few feet. Easier this way. I'll patch it up after." He winked like we were co-conspirators. That wink would haunt me. After the wink incident, I decided to check my property lines. I dug through an old filing cabinet, past expired warranties and takeout menus from 2014, and found the original plot map from when I bought the house. Tom hadn't crossed a few inches. He had crossed 3 full feet. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew that was enough to matter. I printed the documents, highlighted the lines, and marched over to his front door. He answered, wearing aviators and a tank top that said Pool Life. "Tom," I said, "your pool foundation is 3 feet over the property line." He took off his shades slowly, like I'd just accused him of a crime on national television. "Really?" he said. Wow. Didn't feel like 3 feet. But hey, it's water, not a house we can share. "We're not sharing," I snapped. "You either stop construction or move it back." Tom's smile faded. "You serious?" As a heart attack, he closed the door without another word. The sound of construction continued that afternoon, louder than before. On my side, the freshly dug trench became concrete. Pipes were laid, tiles were installed, and that's when I had an idea. A terrible, beautiful idea. You don't just wake up and start a crocodile sanctuary. That kind of thing takes planning. So, while Tom's workers whistled and splashed and installed color-changing LEDs in the pool that now straddled our shared property line, I was in my garage with a folding table, a pot of black coffee, and 3 open tabs. How to legally introduce dangerous reptiles to private property. Crocodile care for beginners. Zoning laws and you. How to not get sued, but still be a nuisance. The thing is, my town has shockingly loose regulations around exotic animals. You can't have a llama without a permit. But a crocodile? As long as it's fenced and clearly marked as a non-recreational habitat, you're golden. I made a call to a herpetologist 2 towns over. Told him I had a wildlife restoration vision and a unique aquatic environment. He didn't ask questions, he just said, 2 crocs or 3? Tom had unknowingly created the perfect habitat, temperature-controlled water, sun, exposure, and a convenient slope leading from my garden right into the pool. By Wednesday, the paperwork was filed. By Friday, the delivery was scheduled. Tom had a pool. But I was about to have a statement. The Crocs came in a white van. No logos, no questions. Just 2 large crates, each one sealed tighter than a bank vault and labeled, "Live Cargo, Handle with Caution," in 3 languages. The driver, a grizzled man with 1 eye and a pet iguana on his shoulder, gave me a once-over. "You the sanctuary guy?" I nodded, trying to project confidence. Inside, my spine was jelly. He grunted. "Good luck, they're moody." The crates were unloaded, right into my backyard. I had already cordoned off my half of the pool with a reinforced metal barrier and "No trespassing, active reptile habitat" signs. I even planted fake tropical bushes for ambiance. When I pried open the first crate, the croc didn't lunge. It stared, like it was sizing me up. It blinked once slowly and slid into the water with regal disinterest. The second followed, a little smaller but just as menacing. Tom didn't notice until the next morning. I was sipping my coffee, watching the sunrise over Crocodile Cove, when I heard a choked yell from across the fence. He was standing at the edge of the pool, frozen. What is that? I took a long, dramatic sip. That, I said, is Nibbles. The other one's Carl. You put crocodiles in the pool? I gestured at my signs. Sanctuary, Tom. Protected species. State certified. Totally legal, he sputtered. They're swimming in my pool. I smiled. Our pool. Tom, being Tom, didn't go down without a fight. 2 days after Nibbles and Carl took up residence, he tried to pretend like nothing had changed. Saturday rolled around, and so did the first sign of his denial, an email blast titled "Pool Party Y'all," sent to the entire neighborhood. I watched from my lawn chair as guests trickled in, sunscreened and smiling, carrying coolers and folding chairs. Music started bumping, something with too much bass and not enough class. A guy in flamingo swim. Trunks did a cannonball into his side of the pool. Bad idea. The splash traveled across the center line into Croc territory. Nibbles, who had been basking quietly on a stone I named the throne, slid into the water like a missile. The party guy screamed and climbed out so fast, he left a flip-flop behind. What is that? Someone yelled. Tom tried to downplay. They're decorative. It's a themed pool. Tropical, authentic. Cue Carl lunging at a floating inflatable flamingo and popping it like a balloon. Chaos broke out. Lawn chairs toppled. Kids cried. Someone dropped an entire tub of guacamole and ran barefoot across my flower beds. I just watched, sipping an iced tea with a sprig of mint from the comfort of my crocodile-free deck. By sunset, the party was over. Guests scattered like survivors of a shipwreck. Tom stood alone in his soggy tank top, staring at Carl and Nibbles as they floated ominously in the fading light. He didn't say anything, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew he'd started a war, and he was losing. On Monday morning, I opened my door to find an envelope taped to it. Thick paper, gold seal, Comic Sans font. Never a good sign. It was from the HOA. Apparently, Tom had filed an official complaint. The introduction of dangerous reptiles has created a hostile environment for shared community use of recreational structures. He had underlined hostile environment in red ink. The letter demanded that I relocate or remove any and all crocodilian wildlife within 72 hours. It ended with a cheery, warm regards, Diane, HOA president. Naturally, I went straight to the bylaws, and wouldn't. You know it? While there were 10 pages on acceptable mailbox colors and holiday decoration timelines, there was nothing about crocodiles. Nothing about shared pools either. Because why would there be? I drafted my reply. Dear Diane, thank you for your concern. Per page 42, section 8b, I am within my rights to maintain a licensed exotic animal habitat so long as it does not exceed 50% of my property. My crocodiles, Carl and Nibbles, remain behind proper fencing and are not classified as domestic pets. They are also registered with the local wildlife authority. P.S. They respond best to classical music. Just a tip. Warmest regards, your friendly sanctuary manager. By that evening, the HOA group chat was in flames. Screenshots were leaking. Half the neighborhood was furious. The other half had bought binoculars and were watching the crocs from their windows like it was nature TV. Tom stormed into my yard just after sunset holding his phone. You think this is funny? I pointed to the sign. Caution, reptile restoration area, do not tap glass. Tom, I said, I think it's evolutionary justice. He left in a huff. Carl hissed approvingly. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar sound, the clatter of metal and the hum of a generator. I stepped out onto my porch and stopped mid-sip of my coffee. Tom was building a fence. Not just any fence. A towering 10-foot metal monstrosity with motion-activated lights, a padlocked gate, and what looked suspiciously like security cameras, pointing directly at my yard. He wore a tool belt and an unearned expression of smug triumph. You wanted a border, he shouted, now you've got one. You do realize this makes the pool look like a prison yard, right? He hammered in another post. Better a prison than a swamp. I chuckled. Funny, considering you're The one who flooded my yard in the first place. By noon, the wall was complete, cutting the pool in half with brutal efficiency. His side looked sterile, boxed in. Mine, lush, wild, crawling with life. Nibbles was sunning herself under a heat lamp I'd installed. Carl floated lazily, looking as if he were considering a second career as a pool noodle. But Tom wasn't done. That night I heard the whir of a projector. I looked out my window and saw it. A giant inflatable screen playing Lake Placid on a loop, loud, graphic, and strategically angled so its crocodile munching scenes faced my house. Petty, but effective. Even I had to admit, it was a solid move. Still, if Tom wanted a Cold War, I was more than happy to escalate. After Tom's Lake Placid propaganda theater, I knew I had to shift tactics. It was time to win hearts and minds. So I pivoted. On Tuesday, I updated my yard sign. It no longer read, "Caution Reptile Restoration Area." Now it said, "Carl and Nibbles Conservation Initiative, public education tours available Saturdays at 2 p.m. Underneath was a QR code that led to a website I whipped up in an hour using a free template. It featured stock images of wetlands, a fake mission statement about urban ecological reintegration, and a blog post titled, "My Journey from Frustrated Homeowner to Crocodile Ally." The first Saturday, 6 people showed up. 3 were just curious, 2 were HOA spies, and one little girl brought her stuffed alligator and asked if Carl could sign it. Carl just blinked. By the next weekend, Channel 9 local news had caught wind of the story. I'll never forget the reporter's intro. A pool war turns into a sanctuary success. Meet the man turning neighborhood drama into environmental awareness. Tom watched the whole segment from his porch with a bowl of popcorn and a look that could shatter mirrors. When the camera panned to him, shirtless, glaring, framed by his industrial-strength fence, he looked like a man who'd just lost custody in a custody battle he started. The final straw? Someone started a GoFundMe for the crocodile conservation cause. We had $800 in 3 hours. I ordered matching sun hats for Carl and Nibbles, because if you're going to have reptiles in your yard, you might as well lean in. The envelope arrived midweek, thick, serious, and aggressive in a way only legal documents can be. From the desk of Thomas J. Wexler, screen subject, unauthorized use of shared recreational property, public endangerment creating emotional distress, and skimmed the letter, which used phrases like reckless reptilian negligence and deliberate endangerment via saurian weaponization. According to Tom's lawyer, I had 10 days to remove Carl and Nibbles or face a lawsuit for psychological trauma, depreciated property value, and unauthorized wildlife broadcasting. I snorted. Wildlife broadcasting? He meant the live stream I set up called Croc Watch Suburban Survival, which had gained 12,000 followers and 2 minor brand sponsorships. I replied with my own letter, written on stationery I'd customized, with an elegant crocodile watermark. Dear Thomas J. Wexler Esquern, thank you for your colorful concerns. The sanctuary is legally certified and compliant with State Wildlife Statutes Section 17B. Regarding emotional distress, Carl and Nibbles are deeply empathetic animals and regret any hardship their presence has caused. They've asked me to pass along their best wishes. Warmest regards, your neighbor and conservation partner, name redacted. That night Tom did something desperate. He turned on pool jets. High-pressure, industrial-strength jets, probably meant to simulate a lazy river, blasting water from his side of the pool toward mine. I watched from my deck as the waves sloshed over Carl's basking rock. Nibbles didn't like that. She launched herself at the invisible line like a torpedo, and Tom, standing a little too close to the edge, slipped. There was a splash, a scream, and then silence. Carl just stared from the other side of the barrier like a bored lifeguard. I called out, "You all right, Tom?" A wet, shivering voice rose from the water. "I'm calling animal control." I smiled. "Great. I already have them on speed dial." 2 days later they came, animal control. 3 of them. Khaki uniforms, aviator shades, One had a tranquilizer gun like he'd been waiting his whole career to use it. Tom stood at the property line with crossed arms and a smug little smirk like he'd finally summoned the cavalry. I greeted the officers with lemonade and a printout of Carl and Nibbles's permits in a laminated folder labeled Authorized Fauna. The lead officer glanced through the paperwork, gave a low whistle and said, "You weren't kidding. Everything's in order." Tom's smirk twitched. "But," the officer continued, "we still need to inspect the enclosure, the animal's behavior, and ensure there's no public safety hazard. Standard protocol." "Of course," I said, gesturing like a proud zookeeper. "Right this way." We walked along the sanctuary perimeter. Carl was napping in the shade, mouth open slightly, looking like a prehistoric beanbag. Nibbles was floating gracefully, unbothered by the intrusion, the very image of apex serenity. The officer took notes. "Fence height's good. Signage is clear. Animals appear well-fed and non-aggressive." Tom piped up, "They charged me last week." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean when you sprayed them with high-pressure jets and slipped into their habitat?" The officer nodded slowly. "That would technically be considered provoking wildlife." Tom turned red. "They're crocodiles. They don't belong in a neighborhood." The officer shrugged. "They don't seem to mind it. In fact," he flipped through the paperwork again, "you've even registered the space as an urban micro-sanctuary. That's a first." I smiled. "We're pioneers." The inspection concluded. Verdict: no violations. Sanctuary approved. Animals protected under Local Exotic Species Clause 12F. Tom stormed off without a word. Carl belched. It echoed across the fence like a round of applause. By now, Tom had gone from neighbor to nemesis. The man wasn't just angry. He was obsessed. He stopped mowing his lawn. He canceled his gym membership. He lived at the fence line, glaring, scheming, plotting, and one night he snapped. It was around 2:30 a.m. when the sanctuary's motion sensors went off. I watched the security cam feed through my phone. A shadowy figure in a hoodie crouched low, creeping along the far edge of the pool. Tom. He was carrying a giant raw steak. Classic mistake. I stepped out onto the porch with my phone already dialing 911, but decided to give him a moment of clarity first. "Tom," I called into the night, "if that's what I think it is, I'd advise against it." He froze. Then he tossed the steak over the fence and bolted back toward his house. The steak landed with a wet smack on Nibbles' rock. She looked at it, sniffed it once, then turned away in disgust. Carl floated over, gave it a nudge, and let it sink. My phone buzzed. The camera system had automatically flagged the footage as suspicious human activity. I had it backed, up to the cloud, and emailed to myself and just for fun to Diane from the HOA. The next morning I filed an official report. Unlawful baiting of exotic species with intent to provoke or disturb. Violation of Sanctuary Ethics Clause 3B. The police didn't arrest him, but he did get slapped with a hefty fine and a very public warning from the local wildlife board. The next day, someone updated the Croc Watch live stream with a new banner. Day 74 of Suburban Sanctuary Siege. Carl 1. Tom 0. Carl and Nibbles became minor celebrities on TikTok. Tom? He started wearing sunglasses at night. The man had cracked, and we still had 4 parts to go. If there was one thing Tom underestimated, even more than my love for passive-aggressive revenge, it was the internet. On Thursday morning, I uploaded a 12-second clip from our sanctuary cam. Carl, perfectly still on his basking rock, wearing a tiny straw hat. Tom, in the background, tripping over his own hose while trying to take a blurry photo of the fence. Caption: just 2 kings minding their business. Croc life. By nightfall, the video had 3.2 million views. By morning, BuzzFeed called the sanctuary a shining example of eco-petty warfare. Carl got fan art. Someone crocheted a Carl plushie. A jazz saxophonist even sent a DM offering to compose a Crocodile blues soundtrack. Tom was not amused. While I was fielding requests from documentary students and politely declining an offer to turn my backyard into a reality show. Working title, Snapped, Scales in Suburbia. Tom was hosting his own one-man protest out front with a sign that read, "Stop the reptile tyranny. I just wanted a hot tub." No one honked. In fact, someone put a Carl sticker on his mailbox. The HOA, surprisingly, stayed silent, likely still reeling from Diane's accidental forward of my laminated permit email to the entire neighborhood. Group chat. Why does this man own more filing supplies than we do? Meanwhile, Carl and Nibbles thrived. They had fresh fish twice a week. They responded to jazz music. They started to nap together on the same basking platform like an old married couple. And while Tom's pool now sat untouched and weirdly chlorinated, the sanctuary had become a local attraction. A new sign at the edge of my yard read, "Welcome to Carl and Nibbles' Crocodile Cove TM Tours Teachable Moments and a cautionary tale about picking fights with the wrong neighbor." Just when things seemed to have settled into a weirdly satisfying rhythm, Croc's happy, locals amused, and Tom, perpetually steaming like a broken kettle, the real twist came in the mail, a certified letter. From a lawyer, not Tom's this time. The letterhead read, "Greystone Property Developers LLC. Apparently Tom had sold his house. I blinked. Reread the letter. He didn't even list it publicly, just offloaded the whole thing, probably out of spite, to some faceless development company. The kind that knocks down old homes to build new ones with names like the villas at Crocodile Glen. I walked next door and found him packing. "Leaving so soon?" I asked, sipping my tea. He didn't look up. "Enjoy your reptiles while you can. They'll be someone else's problem soon." I laughed. "You know you just sold a house that backs up to a crocodile sanctuary, right?" He zipped a suitcase with more anger than necessary. "Good. I hope they sue you." I left him to stew and went straight back home to Google Greystone Property Developers. Turns out they build luxury modern homes for eco-conscious families. Solar panels, smart home tech, rainwater systems. Their homepage had a giant banner that read, "Sustainable living for a better tomorrow." I chuckled. They were about to inherit two 700-pound ambassadors of ecological justice. Later that night, Carl did a slow, elegant roll into the water while a crescent moon hung over the yard. Change was coming, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to be the kind Tom had hoped for. 2 weeks after Tom peeled out of the neighborhood in his Prius with a cracked bumper and a crushed ego, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled into his old driveway. Out stepped a man in a blazer and loafers with no socks, the universal uniform of a developer who says things like, "We're excited to integrate into the community," before building a smoothie bar on someone's grandma's grave. His name was Ethan, and he introduced himself as Greystone's Regional Director of Property Innovation. "Love what you've done with your yard," he said, eyeing Carl, who was floating nearby like a scaly log of disapproval. "Thanks," I said. "We go for Jurassic chic out here." Ethan grinned, then pulled out a tablet. "So here's the thing, we're planning to level the property next door and put in 3 townhomes, but the proximity to your, situation is raising some concerns." I nodded slowly. "You mean the endangered species sanctuary fully permitted by county and state law?" He cleared his throat. "Right, that. We were hoping there might be a pathway forward." He offered me a gift basket. It had wine, fancy crackers, and a $25 gift card to a vegan grocery store. I looked him in the eyes. "Ethan, I let my crocodiles pick their own sunning rocks. Do you think I'm the kind of person who can be bought with goat cheese and a weak Pinot Noir?" He tried to laugh. I didn't. "We'll be in touch," he said, a little paler. That night I updated the livestream title, "Carl and Nibbles versus Gentrification, a Reptilian Standoff Begins." The comment section lit up. People started sending donations again. One viewer offered to 3D print little helmets for the Crocs. A local artist painted a mural of Nibbles dressed as a Revolutionary War general with the words, "Don't tread on me or my scaled children." But the best part? The county's environmental board, the same one that approved my sanctuary, sent a notice the next day. pending environmental impact assessment required before any adjacent construction. Carl just smiled. Or he might have been digesting. Either way, it was a win. A month passed. Construction on the property next door? Frozen. Carl and Nibbles? Local legends? Me? Accidentally influential. It started when a wildlife nonprofit reached out. They'd seen the live stream, read the blog, and somehow, don't ask me how, someone from the National Reptile Conservancy visited the sanctuary unannounced during one of our scheduled Saturday tours. They loved it. We've never seen a grassroots sanctuary gain this kind of cultural traction, the rep said, sipping iced tea under a shade umbrella while Carl sunned himself like royalty. Have you ever thought about going national? I blinked. National? We want to relocate Carl and Nibbles to our flagship reserve in Florida, she said. Bigger habitat, professional care, media visibility. In exchange, we'd like to purchase the sanctuary rights from your property and turn your backyard into a permanent educational site. I was stunned. I looked at Carl. He blinked slowly, as if to say, I've done my part. Let the next generation handle the pool wars. So I said yes. Within weeks, Carl and Nibbles were flown first class to Florida. I'm not kidding. There were photos. Carl wore sunglasses. They now live in a lush 30-acre reserve and occasionally appear on children's nature shows under their new titles, Ambassadors of Urban Ecosystem Harmony TM. Back home, my yard is now the Carl and Nibbles Urban Ecology Learning Center. Operated in partnership with the Conservancy, we get school field trips, environmental science interns, and the occasional nosy influencer. As for Tom, word is he tried to buy a house near a koi pond. Last I heard, a heron stole his phone. Fitting. So what started as a petty property dispute ended with 2 rescued crocodiles living like royalty, a defeated HOA tyrant, and a suburban backyard that made it into Architectural Digest under unlikely wildlife paradises. All because one man couldn't build a pool without checking the property line. The end.